presidential interpreter and White House insider Fred Burks. How are you doing?
Doing great. Great to be here and on the show with you.
Good to have you. So explain, what was your role as a presidential interpreter and how did you actually become one?
Well, that's a long story, but I'll give just a very brief picture. I was in college and got really tired of college, and so basically heard about this program that sounded really exciting that sends people over to Asia for a cultural experience. So I went over there and ended up going to Indonesia, living in a home with an extended family, 20 people under one roof, and got really good at Indonesian. Came back home and had to find some work. And a friend of mine who'd been in Indonesia, hey, say your Indonesian's really good. Why don't you try out for this job with the State Department? I said, oh, that sounds fun. So I did. I got accepted and never planned to move up the ranks, but it's pretty good. I could actually start doing simultaneous pretty quick. And I guess 1995, I started in 86 and just did low-level interpreting for a number of years. And then 95 was the first time I interpreted for Bill Clinton and Al Gore. And then eventually, by 2001, I became the top interpreter in Indonesian in the State Department. Wow. And I resigned in 2004 because of excessive secrecy.
Oh, can you elaborate more on that, the excessive secrecy?
Oh, yeah, a lot of people know, particularly under Bush, and even now, the amount of secrecy was just ridiculous, and I just didn't feel I could consciously translate the State of the Union addresses anymore when I knew there was lying and secrecy going on. I said, I just can't do this anymore. And other things had happened too, and I just said, that's it, I'm out of here. And that's when I became a whistleblower, and once I resigned, then I didn't feel any sort of ethical obligation to keep the secrets anymore, and ended up actually getting on the front page of the Wall Street Journal for blowing the whistle on some stuff that happened.
So what were the stuff that you were blowing the whistle about? What was the...
They were manipulating a certain Muslim cleric in Indonesia and trying to turn him into the Osama bin Laden of Southeast Asia. And the guy is not a good guy. He's kind of like a Pat Robertson or a Jerry Falwell, a real religious leader, but he was not the terrorist that they were making him out to be. And they basically were trying to, in a secret meeting that I interpreted at the president of Indonesia's personal home, they tried to get her to secretly turn him over so they could send him off to Guantanamo or someplace like that. And in the press, they're all denying all along that they were putting any pressure on this person. Many in Indonesia suspected that they were doing something, and so long story short, I ended up testifying at an international trial and saying I was there at this secret meeting and this is what happened. And it was huge news. It actually was reported BBC, like I said, front page of Wall Street Journal. So
speaking of, they do try to create enemies, right?
Oh yeah.
So one of the hot topic right now is the whole ISIS thing that's going on.
Yes.
Now, do you have any,
Well, yeah, basically the people that are making huge amounts of profits off of war want to keep us in fear, and they want to keep us angry and divided. They want us to be in this us-them paradigm where they're evil and we're good and we got to fight and we got to pour money into our military. And so anything they can do to support that division and divisiveness is going to bring them profits.
Where do you feel this is all going to go?
Well, I'm an optimist, and I have been since I was a kid, even though I look at some of the deepest, darkest shadows in humanity. I believe that we're developing, we're growing, and this is all forcing us to look at ourselves. And I'm very optimistic that we're learning. I know many of us are learning and growing, and as we do that, we can start to realize, oh, we don't have to fight against each other anymore. We can actually start to work together for a better world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because one of their... What I noticed is that their main tactic is basically divide and conquer. Even within this truth movement, it seems there's already so much division.
Yep.
Pointing fingers at each other,
yep.
at them. It's like, when are we going to actually do something to create change and come together? Yeah. So, what do you feel would be the most important thing that we should know about what goes on behind the scenes?
Well, just that it's much more complex than most people think. A lot of people who start understanding the deep levels going on think that there's basically a small group of men that are really making all the decisions and that that's what's controlling everything that happens in the world. And what I have zero doubt of is that there are major factions within the power elite. And these factions are continually fighting against each other. Sometimes they work together for certain agendas, but a lot of times they're fighting to see who can get the most power, who can get the most money. And that creates a lot of subtleties, a lot of complexities, and it's not just a black and white thing. And so to understand those subtleties is not easy, and yet there are certain basic principles, like greed, for instance, which certainly is a big driving force.
Yeah, it's interesting to know that even in their own group there's conflict. It kind of makes sense, right?
Well, yeah, and especially after 9/11, because basically 9/11, in my opinion, failed. I believe that final airplane was likely supposed to go into the Congress, and then they could have declared martial law. If that had happened, you and I wouldn't be sitting here right now. And so because it failed, a bunch of people woke up and started going, whoa, this is crazy. And even people in the power elite started questioning, and so the factions became even more fractured. And that's why I'm very optimistic now, because there's so much fighting against each other that they're not unified like they used to be before 9/11.
Hmm. So what do you feel humanity can do about this?
Well, it's not about humanity. I mean, obviously, what can each of us do? And then what can we do when we come together in groups? We can't make humanity do anything. But every one of us makes a difference. And this is what I believe, what they want us to believe, that we're powerless. Mm-hmm. That they have the power, and we might as well just, get used to it, get your job, work 40, 50, 60 hours a week to make it by. But actually, I believe every one of us is incredibly powerful. And when we tap into our own power and each take concrete steps to make a difference in this world, that collectively is going to have a huge difference. And people like, I know our listeners, a lot of us are doing, we're doing our part. You do your part, to notice where we're dividing and fighting against each other, when actually there's a bigger thing going on. Because remember, the powers that be kind of want to manipulate us so that we fight against each other. And instead, when we just get back to the basics are, yes, we want to expose what's going on, and we want to create a better way of living for us all. And when we really focus on that, and each of us has a different role, and we each do our role, we're going to see some changes. We already are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting too. We can become so focused on what's wrong with the world, all the craziness that's happening. It has led me to a form of depression before, right, when I was looking into all this stuff. Like, what are we even going to do? I'm just sitting by myself on my computer looking up this stuff.
Yep.
But it seems like people are not coming together. We're still stuck in the whole rat race.
Well, it's very natural when you first find out about all this stuff to be both depressed and angry. That's very natural, and you kind of have to go through that. Once you make it through that, though, that's when you can really start being effective. Because when you're depressed and angry, it really doesn't serve you. Go out and be angry at the world. People don't tend to respond to it. Then you're just creating more of the same. But once you can vent your anger and start becoming productive, that's when we really start making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when you're always stuck in a reaction mode, you're basically just running in circle, pointing fingers, but you're not actually creating what you want to see in the world.
Right.
That makes sense. In terms of solutions and alternatives to our current system, is there any one of them that excites you the most, or a vision that you have of what the world could look like if we were to, make a change?
Well, the way I look at it is, I think it's a bunch of small movements. Yeah. Like there's all these small groups coming together, both through the internet and in person, that are working together to make changes. And there's all sorts of them out there. And as these groups start linking up and really getting that it's not about working against each other, we don't have to agree on everything, mm-hmm, but we can basically agree that it's time for the old hierarchical paradigm to collapse. And that the network of groups that is forming can catch the pieces as that old paradigm hierarchical structure collapses. And that's what I'm very optimistic. Mm-hmm. It's already happening, but I believe it could accelerate quite a bit too.
So I understand you have a very spiritual perspective about it all. How does this spiritual path you're on fit in this whole conspiracy? How do they come together? Yeah,
well, I am a spiritual person. I believe that there's an inner power and a higher power, and when I open to those and ask for guidance, I get it. And in my life, I know some people don't believe in that, and that's fine, but in my life, it totally works. And for those who have a path, whatever your spiritual path is, if you open up to your inner and higher guidance, I think you can't help but start being led and knowing, okay, this is what I need to do now. You shared with me before this interview how a certain serendipity caused you to go, okay, I need to start doing this work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, definitely did not come when I had all the creativity and inspiration to start doing this work. It didn't come from so much anger. It was when I was actually after that whole depression that I realized that the creativity came in, the drive came in for me to actually do something. So it's very true.
Well, this may sound funny or weird to some people who are still in that depression or anger phase, but like once I got through it, I'm having fun now. It's like, wow, I've met all these great people through the websites I manage, and Want to Know That Info is the most popular. But wow, and we're all working together, and it's like we're also feeling that the crisis stage is over. Right after 9/11 was a very critical phase for several years. Mm-hmm. But now it seems like things are more and more falling apart for the old hierarchy. And so it's actually, we're having fun, and it's cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is very cool because we've played this game for so long, and finally it seems there's some action. People are starting to question things, and there's something new emerging. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a very, very exciting time to be alive for sure. Yeah. So what would be your final message for the audience of WeAreChange?
I'd say to really be aware of when we're fighting against each other. We have this beautiful big movement. It's growing all the time to create a better world. And when we sit and fight for ideological differences that aren't really that important, does that really help when we end up dividing each other? So what I do whenever I'm working with a group of people, if anybody is being divisive, I point out, look, this has ended up being divisive. Can we put that aside? And if not, sometimes I have to ask the people to leave the group because, no, we want to work together. We don't want to try to divide each other. And we all know that sometimes we get infiltrated. And those infiltrators are experts at keeping us divided. And I'm not looking at who's the infiltrator. I'm just looking at who is dividing us. So when we really start remembering what's the big picture that we're working on and where can we come together, when the divisiveness comes up, we don't want to stop, deny it, but it's like, okay, how can we turn this around? And look at who, we don't need to promote the divisiveness anymore. Let's promote working together.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes I would say things like that, and some people are actually afraid of the word unity and coming together because they associate it with one world government. Because probably their tactic of how they want to draw us in this new world government is, smooth talking, saying, it's all for peace, it's all for love, coming together, and they're going to try to use this, I guess, fundamental message of truth. Right. But to manipulate us. So people are kind of afraid.
Well, yeah, I think that's what you really touched on, is it's fear. And so if you're living in fear, everything is scary. And unity is scary, and love, let's not talk about love, But
why not?
Because it's scary. And what I really want to invite people is, do you really want to live in fear? And even, let's say we succeed and we live in a world of fear, it's like, that's not what I want. I feel very lucky that I've been able to get to a place where I have very little fear. And, once, I think the fear often comes from the inside stuff. And we talk about an inside job, sometimes the most powerful work we can do is work on our own fear. Work on the places inside of ourselves that are fighting against each other. And when we can get more internally coherent and harmonious inside of ourselves, that's going to show up in our lives and help us to move forward.
Yeah, you could say that change is an inside job,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you have tools for how do we work through our fears? How do we work on ourselves to, reflect a better world outside?
Well, for anybody who's interested, we have some free online courses that deal with exactly that. They not only do they educate about the shadows, but they also, and shadows external and internal, but they also give inspiring information to look at, wow, how can we transform all of this? And if our main website, I actually manage like 12 websites, and the main website where you can learn all about these is peerservice.org, peerservice.org. And you can read there about our different online courses. They're free. Everything we do is free because I'm dedicated to a new paradigm where we do things out of the generosity of our heart. So lots of great information if you go to peerservice.org. If you want to look at the shadow material from a sort of a more objective viewpoint, go to wanttoknow.info. There's lots of great tools out there. You'll find out lots of other stuff on the internet too. If you just get clear on what you want and go look for it, my guess is it'll start showing up for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. That was an awesome and very empowering message.
Thank you.
Kind of refreshing to not be all doom and gloomish and to get excited for change instead of depressed about it.
Go team. I'm on
yes,
let's go team.
We're on this together.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you expand on your quote when you said military men are dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns for foreign policy?
I never said that.
Bob Woodward said you said that.
Oh.
Hi, Mr. Kissinger. Pleasure. How you doing? I just wanted to know, what do you mean when you said illegal we do immediately?